They said Maye Musk had survived everything: fame, poverty, single motherhood. But no one expected she'd nearly lose her life in a room full of applause. And certainly not that her quietest defender would be a homeless boy named Zion Mbatha. What he shouted shattered the silence, and exposed something far darker than betrayal. Before we dive in, let us know where you're watching from, and if this story moves you, don't forget to subscribe. The Belmondel Encanto shimmered beneath the midday sun, its white arches casting clean shadows across the marble terrace. Inside, violins whispered through the dining hall as crystal glasses clinked and servers glided between tables with the precision of dancers. This wasn't lunch, it was spectacle. And at its center sat Maye Musk, her silver hair impeccably styled, her white silk blazer pristine, her presence composed yet commanding. 76 and still radiant, she was the keynote guest at the annual Women in Vision Summit, where CEOs, diplomats, and philanthropists had gathered to applaud one another's ambition. Across the linen-draped table, Genevieve Sinclair offered a poised smile. Her dark suit shimmered faintly under the skylight, her pearl earrings swaying with each tilt of her head. On paper, the two women were allies, pillars of empowerment, symbols of success. But the distance in Genevieve's gaze betrayed something cooler than respect. She complimented Maye's latest memoir, leaned in as though hanging on every word, yet her fingers tapped softly on the stem of her glass, an impatient rhythm masked as elegance. Outside the restaurant's window wall, a boy crouched behind a trimmed hedge, watching. Zion Mbatha was 13, small for his age, with a torn hoodie stretched over his thin frame. His dark eyes moved constantly, quick, alert, tired. He'd been collecting recyclables along the coast road, but the sight of the grand event inside had frozen him in place. Zion wasn't just watching the rich. He was reading them. And something about the table in the center, the way one woman smiled too often and the other not enough, made him stay. Inside, Maye glanced at her notes. In less than an hour, she'd speak on stage about aging with purpose, about resilience, about truth. Across from her, Genevieve lifted her champagne flute, voice honeyed. To older women building new empires, she said, may we never be underestimated. Maye smiled and clinked her glass gently. To rising again, she replied. A server in black approached quietly, carrying a tray with two tall glasses. One was lemon water, the other a pale green matcha spritz. The moment was almost unnoticeable. Genevieve's left hand dipped into her handbag, her fingers closing around something amber and slender. In a smooth motion, she palmed it, then passed it to the server along with a folded napkin. He nodded without speaking and turned away toward the service station. From the hedge, Zion's eyes narrowed. Through the glass, he could just make out the glint of the amber vial as it changed hands. His breath caught. The server returned seconds later, placing the drinks precisely before each guest. Genevieve didn't touch hers. Maye thanked him, lifted the straw to her lips, then paused, distracted by a tap on her shoulder from an attendee passing by. Zion remained crouched, heart pounding. He didn't know who the woman across from Maye was, not by name, but something in the sequence felt wrong. The way she avoided eye contact as the drink arrived. The faint curl of her mouth that didn't match the warmth in her words. He remembered his father teaching him how to spot lies, not in what people said, but in how still they became when they needed you to believe it. Maye turned back to the table and reached for the matcha. Zion stood. Just a fraction. Then ducked again. Inside, Genevieve twirled a silver bracelet and laughed softly at something Maye said. Her shoulders were relaxed, but her gaze flicked once toward the drink. It sat untouched. Waiting. Zion felt his pulse in his ears. A strange quietness fell over the world outside the window, even though nothing had truly changed. The birds were still chirping. The wind still moved the trees. But the moment had shifted, as if time was holding its breath. And so did he. Zion pressed his shoulder against the cool metal of the side door, peering through the narrow glass slit. From this angle, he could see most of the main dining room, the long tables arranged like a chessboard of power and precision. The women inside moved with a kind of calm he recognized. Not real calm, but the kind people practiced when they knew they were being watched. Cameras blinked silently from corners, and everything gleamed as if polished for an audience. He had seen it before. Not in places like this, but through the lens of his father's old camera, hidden in refugee camps, border checkpoints, and silent government buildings. His father, Zion Mbatha, had been a war correspondent. A quiet man who taught Zion how to see without staring, how to listen between words, how to spot the moment when someone lied, not with their mouth, but with their eyes. And right now, Genevieve Sinclair's eyes were too still. Inside, May leaned forward slightly, her elbows resting gently on the edge of the table. She was speaking, and though Zion couldn't hear her through the thick glass, he could read the ease in her expression. She smiled, nodded, gestured gracefully with one hand. "If all goes well today, I'll sign off on the final installment. 30 million, she seemed to say, or something close to it. 4 women-led startups. 4 legacy projects. 4 visibility." Genevieve nodded in return, lips parting in what looked like delight. But her hands remained perfectly still in her lap, fingers steepled, unmoving. Her shoulders didn't shift. And her eyes, Zion noticed, didn't meet May's when she smiled. They lingered a half-second too long on the glass in front of her, on the green drink, then moved away. Zion's stomach twisted. He blinked hard, tried to convince himself he was imagining things. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe rich people just acted like this, detached, guarded, strange. But something about that moment gnawed at him. The way the server had accepted the small vial without hesitation. The quickness of the exchange. The precise placement of the matcha. Zion's father once told him, "Evil rarely shouts. It whispers. And when it's about to strike, it does so calmly." He crouched lower, eyes darting between the glass and the guards stationed near the entry arch. If he ran in now, would they stop him? Would they throw him out before he could even speak? He was just a kid in a frayed hoodie. No one would believe him. They would see a delinquent, not a witness. Inside, May laughed at something, and the warmth of it reached even through the glass. It was soft, genuine. Her hands reached again toward the drink. Genevieve shifted ever so slightly in her seat. The tiniest motion. A tilt of her wrist. A glance downward. And then back up, her smile wider now, almost rehearsed. Zion stood halfway, then froze. He felt the breeze against his back from the hallway behind him. One step in either direction would decide everything. Stay quiet and walk away. Or speak up and risk being thrown out, or worse. He remembered a different moment. 2 years ago. His father coughing on a floor in a hotel room in Eritrea, whispering for Zion to stay hidden while he texted their location to his editor. He remembered the sound of distant voices, the heavy knock on the door, the smell of metal in the air. And he remembered the silence after. Zion clenched his fists, fingers trembling. His eyes locked on the glass. Inside, May wrapped both hands around the glass, lifting it slightly as she turned to greet a woman who had just arrived at the table behind her. She hadn't taken a sip yet. Not yet. Genevieve's gaze followed the drink, not May. Zion's breath caught again. He took one slow step away from the door, then another. Then stopped. His heart beat louder now, not from fear, but from the weight of the decision pressing down on him like a wave. He didn't know who Maye Musk really was. But he knew what he had seen. And he knew what his father would have done. The moment the glass rose in May's hand, Zion moved. He didn't think. His feet launched forward before the last thread of doubt could pull him back. The exit door slammed open behind him, striking the wall with a metallic crack that cut through the music and murmurs like a blade. Heads turned. Forks paused mid-air. And before the guards could blink, a small, wiry boy in a torn grey hoodie was running full speed across polished tile toward the center of the banquet. "Don't drink it. Please, There's something in your glass." His voice cracked from strain, but it carried, clear, desperate, unmistakably real. The dining hall froze. For a breathless second, even the servers stilled, trays suspended mid-service. May's hand halted mid-lift, her lips parting slightly in confusion. Her fingers tightened around the glass, unsure whether to set it down or bring it closer. Her eyes locked on the boy now standing at the edge of her table, chest heaving, arms raised not in threat, but in warning. The guards reacted a beat late. 2 men in black suits surged forward from the corners, radio earpieces buzzing. One reached for Zion's shoulder. The boy spun away, stepping behind a marble pillar and shouting again. There's something in it. I saw her. The woman across from you. She gave something to the waiter. It went in your drink. May blinked. She looked at Genevieve. Genevieve had already risen to her feet. Calm. Composed. But cold. We appear to be experiencing some kind of disruption, she said to the crowd, voice cool as glass. Someone has clearly wandered in from the street. She turned to May, lowering her voice just enough to make it private but still audible. It's nothing. A child looking for attention. I'll handle this. But the room wasn't returning to normal. The room was watching. Phones had been lifted. Guests were whispering. One of the live stream cameras slowly panned toward the center table. A reporter from London Times sat 2 chairs away, her expression sharp now, pen forgotten beside her plate. Zion stood trembling, but he did not move. Please, he said again, his voice quieter now but steadier. I'm not trying to scare anyone. I saw what she did. That bottle. The way she slipped it into the napkin. She gave it to the man in black. Then your drink came back and she didn't touch hers. Only yours. Genevieve turned, finally facing him fully. Her smile was pleasant, but her eyes had darkened. You're confused, sweetheart. That never happened. I don't even know who you are. Zion flinched. Not from her tone, but from the way her words were meant to erase him. As if he were a smudge to be wiped away. May had not spoken. She set the glass down slowly. Her eyes narrowed, flicking between the boy and Genevieve. Her voice, when it came, was steady but low. You said he wandered in. But he came straight to me. Why? Genevieve hesitated for the briefest moment. Because he's a street kid, Genevieve said smoothly. They say all kinds of things for attention. Maybe he thought interrupting a public figure would earn him some kind of reward. Or fame. This happens all the time. One of the guards stepped closer to Zion. May held up a hand. Not yet. She looked at the boy again. Really looked. He wasn't crying. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't begging. He looked like someone who'd seen something too important to stay silent about. Where did you see the vial? May asked. Zion's voice didn't shake. In her left hand. Amber glass. Small, like something for eye drops. She passed it to the server folded in a napkin. He nodded. Then your drink came. I've seen that bottle before. My father, he was a journalist. He showed me things like that. Genevieve's face remained composed, but her hand had dropped to her side, fingers curling into the fabric of her jacket. The crowd around them was no longer pretending not to listen. Whispers rippled like water through a rising tide. Someone near the back muttered, "Should we get security to test the glass?" The suggestion hung in the air. May didn't blink. She lifted the glass slightly, then stopped. Turning her gaze on the head of security, she said with quiet authority, "Get someone from the kitchen. I want the drink tested. And I want the server who brought it here. Now." Genevieve's voice rose slightly. "This is absurd. You're letting a boy in a hoodie disrupt a $10,000 plate luncheon?" May's eyes stayed locked on hers. "No. I'm letting the truth disrupt it." And for the first time, Genevieve said nothing. Zion stepped forward, still trembling but louder now, his voice cutting through the murmurs like a blade. "I saw her put something in your drink. I swear I did." She gave the bottle to the waiter, he wrapped it in a napkin and took it straight to the bar. "I saw the whole thing." People had stopped pretending to eat. Chairs shifted. Heads turned. The illusion of distance, the polite indifference that insulated the powerful, had broken. A few guests craned their necks for a better view, while others whispered behind manicured hands. More phones appeared, faces lit by screens now trained on Zion, on May, and especially on Genevieve. Genevieve stayed composed, her voice silk-wrapped steel. "That's enough. This child clearly has issues. Perhaps a misunderstanding, perhaps something more serious. But are we truly entertaining the idea that a global philanthropist is attempting to poison a 76-year-old woman at a charity luncheon? Maye said nothing. The silence grew heavier. Then, from the far end of the table, a woman in a pale blue suit raised her hand slightly. Her voice was gentle but sure. "Excuse me. I don't know what's going on. But I did see something odd. When Genevieve stood up earlier, before the drinks were served, her hand was already resting on Maye's glass. I noticed it because I thought it was a bit forward. The air shifted. The atmosphere, once carefully composed like an orchestra, slipped out of tune. A few people gasped. Others turned sharply toward Genevieve, now standing frozen. Genevieve forced a smile. I reached across the table for a napkin. That's all. You must have misread it. The woman shook her head. No. It was the glass. I'm sure. A young man in a waiter's uniform stood rigid by the entrance, face pale. The head of security, now beside Maye, gestured him over. You delivered these drinks? Yes. Who gave you this order? The waiter hesitated. A beat too long. Genevieve's eyes narrowed. The server swallowed, then looked at Zion. It was handed to me in a napkin. I was told it was a request for the matcha spritz to be slightly sweetened. I thought it was syrup. I didn't ask. Genevieve's voice turned sharper now. You're not seriously suggesting I tampered with a guest's drink, are you? That's slander. That's actionable. Do you even know who I am? We do, someone muttered from the back. Another voice followed. I think we all do. And that's the problem. Genevieve's expression began to crack. The softness around her eyes tightened. Her hand returned to her side, fingers curling slowly into a fist. Maye looked down at the glass again. It remained untouched, but now it pulsed with meaning. More than liquid. It had become a symbol. Of trust. Of betrayal. Of what people pretend not to see. Beside her, Zion stood like a shadow that refused to be erased. A cameraman moved in closer. The red light on his shoulder flicked on. Genevieve saw it. This is a mistake, she said. Her voice now carried urgency, a tremor beneath the polish. I came here to support this cause. I have nothing but respect for Maye. And if we're going to turn against one another based on the accusations of a stranger, then we've already lost. Maye's voice came quiet, but it silenced the room. He's not a stranger. Not anymore. Zion didn't move, but his chest rose and fell quickly, the adrenaline still coursing through him like heat trapped beneath his skin. Maye continued, eyes fixed on Genevieve. You and I have known each other for years. You've invited me onto panels. Shared platforms. Smiled for cameras. But in all that time, I never saw what was behind your eyes. Genevieve stared back, mask slipping further. I trusted you. I defended you. Even when your numbers didn't add up. Even when the rumors started to surface. I told people you believed in women's futures. But maybe you just believed in your own. A low hum moved through the guests. No one was pretending anymore. Genevieve's lips parted, as if to reply. But no words came. From the hallway, footsteps approached. A man in a white coat, head of food safety at the venue, arrived with a test strip in hand. He approached the table with care. We ran a rapid test on the contents of the glass. There are irregularities. Not sugar. Not citrus. It's a compound typically found in prescription-grade tranquilizers. Odorless. Bitter only in high doses. In this amount, it could cause loss of consciousness within minutes. Gasps exploded around the room. Maye didn't blink. The man continued. We're advising you not to consume it. We're contacting local authorities now. Genevieve stepped back. Her chair scraped loudly against the floor. She turned, eyes darting, as if searching for a way out that no longer existed. Zion didn't speak. He didn't need to. The room had chosen a side. And it wasn't hers. Genevieve didn't run. She stood there, surrounded by silence so complete it felt like the walls themselves were listening. The waiters had vanished. The cameras hadn't. Every lens in the room remained fixed on her, on the glass still sitting in front of Maye, on the boy whose voice had shattered the illusion of civility. May's hand trembled slightly as she reached to straighten the napkin by her plate. She didn't look at Zion. Not yet. Her eyes were still locked on the woman across from her. "Genevieve," she said quietly, "I used to believe you were a good person." The words didn't land like an accusation. They landed like a farewell. Genevieve's jaw twitched. Her lips parted, a flicker of protest forming, but then she exhaled slowly, her spine still straight, her hands now resting flat on the white tablecloth as though bracing for a blow. "You believed what I wanted you to believe," Genevieve replied, her voice low but steady. "That's what this whole game is. Isn't it? Image. Optics. The right phrasing. The perfect timing. You were never better than me, Maye. Just louder. Just shinier." Maye blinked once. "And the funding?" Genevieve's smile didn't reach her eyes. "You killed 3 of my projects in 2 years. 3. You stood on a stage and told a room full of donors that our foundation lacked transparency. That our impact was performative. You dressed it up in flowery language about ethics and vision, but we both know what it was. It was a message. And people heard it. They pulled their money." May's voice tightened. "So you drugged me? That was your answer?" "No," Genevieve snapped, then stopped herself. She took a slow breath, shaking her head as if clearing fog. "I wasn't going to kill you. This wasn't some dramatic movie plot. It was just enough to keep you quiet. Make you miss your speech. Make you stumble. Forget your lines. Enough to remind them that you're not infallible. That you're old." A gasp broke through the silence. Not from Maye. From someone in the audience. Maybe a journalist. Maybe a sponsor. It didn't matter. The truth had rippled out. Zion took a step back, instinctively moving closer to the side wall. His hands were still at his sides, open, but tight. Genevieve's gaze flicked toward him. You think you're some kind of hero?" she hissed. "You don't even know what this room is. You have no idea what we build here. You survive on scraps. We build empires." He didn't answer. She turned back to Maye. "You think all this is about justice? About kindness? No. It's about power. You just found a prettier way to sell it." Maye slowly stood. Her hands pressed to the table for support, but when she straightened, she stood tall. She wasn't trembling anymore. "Maybe I did," she said. "Maybe I polished the message. But it was still truth. And if that truth cost you something you didn't earn, then I have no regrets." Genevieve opened her mouth, but the words caught. Behind her, the head of security returned, followed by a woman in a black blazer carrying a sealed evidence pouch. Inside was the glass. And the report. "We've confirmed the presence of clonazole," the woman said. "A fast-acting sedative. If consumed in full, it could have rendered the subject unconscious within minutes. Possibly dangerous given her age." Maye didn't flinch. Genevieve took one final step backward. "This is ridiculous," she said, but her voice had lost its sharpness. She looked smaller now. The room no longer belonged to her. "You're making a mistake." It was Maye who answered. "No. You did." 2 guards approached Genevieve from behind. One extended a hand toward her arm. "Don't touch me," she said, pulling away. But she didn't resist. Not really. As they took her by the elbows and began leading her toward the back doors, the crowd parted without a word. Every guest stepped back as if something toxic had just been identified and marked for removal. Zion watched it all with wide, dark eyes. Not triumphant. Just stunned. Maye turned to him slowly, at last. Their eyes met across a chasm neither of them had asked to cross. "You didn't have to do that," she said softly. "I know," he said. "But you did." Zion nodded once. The moment lingered. Heavy. Quiet. Beautiful in its strange and uneasy stillness. And then, for the first time since he entered the room, Zion smiled. Just barely. The kind of smile that comes when someone who has always watched finally gets seen. The dining hall emptied with a strange, reluctant quiet, as if the air itself didn't know how to move on. Silverware lay abandoned, glasses untouched, conversations left suspended mid-sentence. One by one, guests drifted out through the arching doors of the Belmond El Encanto, their high heels clicking against stone, their eyes avoiding the cameras now swarming the entrance. The event, once a glittering promise of power and progress, was over. The speech would not be delivered. The celebration had ended before it ever began. Inside, Maye sat motionless at the head of the long table. The room was mostly cleared, save for a few staff cleaning silently, avoiding her gaze. The glass had been removed, the linen replaced, the cameras packed away. But something remained in the air, a residue that could not be wiped clean. She stood. Outside on the terrace, Zion sat alone on a concrete bench beneath the shade of a jacaranda tree. A hotel staffer had given him a bottle of water and a paper cup of crackers, both untouched. His hands were resting on his knees, his back straight, his expression unreadable. A police officer had asked him some questions earlier, but no one had told him what to do next. So he waited. Maye pushed through the double doors, ignoring the reporters now clustered at the gates, their voices muffled by distance and glass. She didn't glance toward the news vans, or the photographers, or the guests still lingering by the valet. Her eyes were fixed on the boy who had changed everything. She approached quietly, her heels soft on the stone. Zion looked up. For a moment, neither of them spoke. "What's your name?" she asked, her voice gentler than it had been all day. "Zion Mbatha." She nodded once, slowly. "Mbatha. South African?" "My father was," he said. "He was a journalist." "Was?" Zion hesitated. He looked down at the bottle of water, then away. "He died 2 years ago. Sudan. He was reporting on arms trafficking. There was an airstrike. He told me to stay hidden, and I did. But I saw what happened. What people do when they think no one's looking." Maye didn't interrupt. She simply listened, arms folded loosely in front of her, her face unreadable. "I recognized that bottle," Zion continued. "The color. The way it was passed. I saw someone use the same kind, same shape, same dropper, on a local fixer in Khartoum. They put it in his tea. He never made it to the next meeting. My father said it was clean, hard to trace, but strong. I never forgot." She sat down beside him. "You didn't hesitate, did you?" He looked away, embarrassed. "I did. I almost walked. I almost thought, it's not my business. She's rich. She's famous. She'll be fine. I'm just me." "But you didn't walk," Maye said. "No. I couldn't." The wind moved through the branches above them, scattering a few purple petals onto the stones at their feet. "I've been in this industry long enough," Maye said after a pause, "to know how often silence is rewarded. How often people look the other way, call it strategy, call it staying in their lane." Zion didn't answer. She looked at him now, really looked. His sweatshirt was faded and torn at the shoulder. His sneakers didn't match. His face was sharp with hunger and time. But there was something still, something grounded, that many of the women at her table didn't carry. "Do you have anywhere to go tonight?" she asked. Zion hesitated, then shook his head once. Maye exhaled, slow and thoughtful. Her voice, when she spoke again, was quiet. "I owe you my life." Zion's eyes widened slightly. "I didn't do it for anything," he said quickly. "I know." They sat in silence for a long moment. Then Maye leaned forward and said, softly but firmly, "Come with me. We'll figure it out. Starting with a meal that doesn't come in a paper cup." Zion blinked. For the first time that day, he allowed himself to nod. The story traveled faster than either of them expected. By nightfall, headlines spanned across continents, news anchors reciting it in clipped tones, social media turning it into hashtags, strangers sharing grainy screenshots of the moment a boy in a torn hoodie pointed at a billionaire's glass and said, "Don't drink that." In every version, the details changed a little. Some called him a street kid. Others called him a whistleblower. A few questioned whether it was staged. But the truth, raw and quiet, slipped through the noise. A child had spoken up. A woman had listened. And everything had changed. Maye sat by her bedroom window that evening, still wearing the same clothes from the event, her phone glowing in her palm. Her assistant had compiled dozens of messages, invitations, condolences, praise, and something else, a series of background checks, quietly conducted within hours of her request. His name is Zion Mbatha. No parents listed in the system. No school enrollment. No current guardian. Last documented residence was a temporary shelter in Inglewood, 2 years ago. After that, the trail faded. Maye scrolled in silence. At the bottom of the page was a photo. It was blurry, a still pulled from surveillance footage. Zion sitting on a curb, elbows on his knees, eyes watching traffic. Alone. Unseen. She dialed. "I want to sponsor him," she told her assistant. "Education, housing, counseling. Whatever it takes." Quietly, but thoroughly. No PR games. Just build him a bridge. The voice on the other end hesitated, then replied softly, "Understood." By morning, the world had already moved on. But Zion hadn't. He sat in the back seat of a black SUV with tinted windows, dressed in clean clothes, still second-hand, but warm, fitted, unfamiliar. His hands rested in his lap, fingers curled into each other. The city blurred outside the window, wide streets and wide skies and people who never looked down. Beside him, Maye sat quietly. She wasn't trying to fill the silence with reassurance. She had learned something from him, about restraint, about letting people find their own words. Her hands stayed folded, her posture relaxed but alert. "You nervous?" she asked, as the car turned past a large iron gate. "A little," Zion said. "You don't have to be anyone but yourself." "That's kind of hard," he replied. She nodded once. "It'll get easier. I promise." The car stopped in front of a long, sandstone building with ivy crawling up its sides. Students milled around the front steps in uniforms, backpacks slung lazily over shoulders, laughter echoing down the walkways. No one noticed the black SUV. No one expected a boy like Zion to step out of it. He climbed out slowly. His shirt was a white button-down, slightly too big at the sleeves. His shoes were stiff and new. He carried no bag, only a folded piece of paper in his pocket with his name printed at the top. Zion Mbatha, admitted for early enrollment, fall term. He turned back to Maye. She rolled down the window halfway, eyes meeting his. "You don't owe me anything," she said. "Just stay curious. Stay kind." Zion didn't smile. Not right away. But something in his eyes shifted. A softening. A crack in the wall he'd spent years holding up. "Thank you," he said. She nodded. Then drove away. Inside, Zion stood at the entrance to the main building, unsure of which door to take. A student passing by slowed, gave him a nod, and pointed toward the front office. Zion followed. As he walked, his shoulders straightened. One step. Then another. The sky was wide above him, and for the first time in years, it felt like it belonged to him too. Far behind, in a world that now felt like another life, a glass still sat untouched on a linen-covered table. And a voice, the voice of a boy no one saw coming, still echoed. Not loud. Not afraid. Just true.